Go.
Hey Nick, how you doing this afternoon?
Doing great, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing well. Time for another podcast episode,
That is right.
and little different than our normal format. I think this is really going to play off as you interviewing me for the most part.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. I snuck in a bunch of questions that you're not ready for, so
Good. Catch me off guard. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
right.
So by way of background, I took a class over the last month or two on conflict resolution for a program I'm working on through Kansas State University. And in the course of that, we read a couple of really good books on the topic. And as a final project, we had to put together a piece on conflict resolution that pertained to our area of work. And so I did that a little bit about how to resolve conflicts in financial planning engagements.
Yeah, not only do I think it's awesome that you're going back to school, I think it's even better that you're doing book reports on a regular
I
basis.
know, right? It's like fourth grade, but the books are longer.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah,
So I guess we'll interview you about it, but I guess we'll let the listeners decide what grade that you should have gotten on your book report.
right, right, right. So the main source for this information, though, seriously, is a book called Crucial Conversations by Patterson, Grenny, McMillan, and Switzer, and it's called Crucial Conversations: Tools for Talking When Stakes Are High. And I had kind of a ho hum attitude about the whole thing, but the more I read it and got into it, there's a lot of really good stuff in here that applies to so much in life. Even in our area of expertise with financial planning, there's always tension and conflict in the background quite often. It's not necessarily like we have clients fighting in our offices, but if you think about money conversations, and there's it's quite often that there's disagreements or misunderstandings, and that can lead to like open conflict and hostility. But you know it's it's not every day that everybody has the same goals, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's very rare for people to be on the same exact page. I think that'd be pretty boring, especially as a couple, if all of your goals were exactly the same.
Right, right.
So, not it's pretty uncommon that people's goals are synced up like that, and
Yeah,
and so it's definitely a source of conflict and figuring that out and figuring out how those goals can flesh together. And I know in our process, it's kind of, we work with one client to kind of build their vision, then we work with the other client, and then we figure out how we're going to put those things together.
right.
So it's definitely something that comes up. So I'm curious, based on your book report and the research that you've done, is why is it that money is such a source of conflict?
Well, if we back up a step to like what is conflict, it's usually like the academic definition is it's a struggle between two parties that perceive they have independent goals and scarce resources, and that one or the other is interfering with them achieving their goals. So, the scarce resource in most of the things we work with is obviously money, although time and energy also can be scarce resources, right? And and so
Yeah.
um, you know, money is the key to unlocking so many of our goals, and it's a scarce resource. So within families and or with coworkers or in a business setting, money can be that source of conflict because it is that scarce resource that we compete over to meet our goals.
Yeah, absolutely. And and I think too, money's emotional by nature. A lot of
Oh,
emotion wrapped up in money, and a lot of,
right,
and
right.
just in terms of the education behind money, it's extremely difficult
Well,
because there's a lot of, you know,
Yeah, and kind of to build on that, one of the elements of conflict is that you have to care, right? There have that without the
Right.
emotion, and you say money brings up emotions. Well, it kind of goes hand in glove. If there weren't emotions involved, there wouldn't be conflict either, because we just wouldn't care, right? Just walk away.
Yeah, that's a great point. Hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree. And it's something that I had to learn early on in my career that, these are things that we can't just ignore or
Hmm.
nothing gets done, right?
Right, right,
We
right,
can't just ignore the emotion. We can't ignore the conflict because if we do, it doesn't matter how good the plan is, nothing's going to happen.
right, right.
So, other than, we talked a little bit about goal setting, but where else does conflict show up in financial planning?
Well, goal setting is the obvious, easy answer, but you'll see it in discussions around job changes within families, um, responsibilities among siblings for taking care of aging parents. You'll see it between husbands and wives and their children with educational goals that don't always align. Um,
Hmm.
there's always different aspects to they can lead to conflict in these situations.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking back to conflicts that I've seen and experienced in my career of all of those things. So,
Hmm.
there's a lot out there, and I'm sure there's a handful that we're missing, but those are, some good
Yeah,
examples
some
for
of
sure.
the obvious ones. Yeah, yeah.
So we talked a little bit about emotion, but what role does emotion play in conflict?
Well, as the authors of the book start right off by saying, they describe a typical conflict we might engage in, and you can feel like if you think about when you're engaging with and usually it's a loved one or someone you care about when there's a conflict going on, your emotions start to boil up, and all of a sudden your ability to think rationally, to talk, the way you to controlling your emotions allows you to express yourself and be rational and work through a conflict. But the more emotional you get, the less likely you are that we're at our worst when we need to be at our best in those situations. So emotions just
Hmm. Yeah.
distort the conflict. They make you say things that you probably wouldn't want to say. They which ratchets up the conflict. Um, they tend to make us fall back on old issues that maybe underlie the relationship. That don't really have anything to do with what we're actually arguing about. And that was that the crux of the matter is to think about what you really are trying to accomplish in the conversation, and that's what usually gets lost in the emotional part. Is it becomes about winning, winning that argument or winning that engagement. And so, when we're focused on all of a sudden being like winning and seizing the high ground in the conversation, we lose sight of what we're really trying to accomplish. And so maybe for example, let's say you're disagreeing with with your spouse about budget allocations, and you both have different opinions about how to spend your money, and you lose sight of the fact that what you're both trying to accomplish is a stable financial environment for your household, right? And instead it becomes about, well, who's wasting money and who's not wasting money. And, well, remember when you spent this on that, and which really doesn't have anything to do with what you're trying to accomplish. So the more emotional you get, the worse the conversation can become. And being able to step back and circle back to that common ground becomes the key.
Yeah, sounds like you're describing a Tuesday night at the Nada household.
I hope Michelle isn't listening.
But you're absolutely right. We get so wrapped up in our thoughts around the emotions when our emotions are high that we forget about the ultimate goal and the ultimate, and a lot of times our ultimate goal aligns really well. It's just that when our
Hmm.
emotions are high, it's hard for us to see that.
Yeah, yeah, and we get further away from what we're really trying to accomplish instead of closer. Um, the
And
go ahead.
I think that's one of the big benefits too of having and working with a financial planner, because they're not going to have those emotions when you're making those financial decisions like you have, and they can be that
Right,
objective resource for you. I tell people all the
right,
time, people, in my experience, people make the worst financial decisions when there's the most chaos involved, and
right,
that's usually because
right,
emotions are super high and people are just doing things to do them, not
right.
necessarily
Yeah,
based in
yeah.
emotional.
We've talked about that around like when grieving is involved. If we have a client that loses a loved one, um, or a family that loses somebody important, and the emotions run strong in a lot of different directions, and a lot of times just stepping back and not making any decisions for a little while might be the better course of action.
Yeah, as you know, I'm a big George Kinder fan, and what
Hmm.
he would say is, let your thoughts go and let your emotions be. It's not necessarily the emotions that are the problem, because
Hmm.
those are natural. It's the thoughts, the I, me, mine that go along with those emotions that really
Hmm.
get us into trouble.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah,
So
the authors. Go ahead.
I'm curious when it comes to, the research that you did, how do you think that financial advisors should help deal with conflict? Is that, when most people think of financial planners, they don't think of it in terms of, well, I need to find a financial planner that's good at helping
Yeah.
deal with conflict.
Right, right. Well, the conflict is inevitable. And again, I can count on the number of hands, I can count on a couple of fingers a couple of times I had open conflict amongst, financial planning clients in my office. But, a lot of times it's there and it's there. And I really think our job, again, comes down to reminding people that like the bigger like you're talking about the immediate goal of like how to spend x dollars on what, but the bigger goal is to come up with that good financial plan that gets you both where you need to be 10 years from now. These details will take care of themselves. And again, I think helping people step out of the immediate conversation to think about the big picture is really where that hits the road. Another example that comes to mind is every once in a while we'll have a couple that disagrees about risk tolerance, right? And that's another one where
Hmm.
if we get
Oh yeah.
too caught up in that right now, we might never get anything done, right? So let's help find that middle ground where all three of us agree that this is going to at least move the plan forward, and we can keep working on it as we go. But stepping back and stepping out of the conversation becomes the biggest part. And a lot of times what we find when people come to us, they've been mired kind of in the same spot for a long time, right? They know that they need to talk, they know they need to do something to improve their financial situation, but they've never been able to have those conversations themselves. And so facilitating that becomes the role that we play.
Yeah, I agree, and I would go as far as saying that how the a financial advisor's ability to deal with conflict is probably one of the most important things that they do, because they when you think about coming up with an asset allocation,
Hmm.
that's not all that important, but it's much more important that you can stick with that asset allocation than it is that you have one. And so that's dealing with conflict, right? You're going to have that
Right.
internal conflict when the market's not going well, where you're saying, okay, I got to get out of here. I got to do something different
Yeah.
because it's not going the way that I want to. And just being able to deal with that conflict right there is, 9/10 of the battle. I mean, when
Right.
you think of
Right.
it, you are the biggest roadblock to your financial success is yourself. And the
Usually.
decisions that you make that
Yeah.
go against what you should be doing.
Right. 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 Yeah. So, in the book Crucial Conversations, they talk about two elements being needed to carry a conversation forward, and one of those is mutual purpose. And again, helping a family find what that mutual purpose is beyond the details. And then the mutual respect part, I think just sometimes having that outside party in the room helps keep things respectful in a way that might not happen if we weren't
Sure.
there. So, like I said, it's not
Absolutely.
often we
Yeah.
have open conflict in the office because people tend to want to behave themselves in front of third
Right.
parties. But
Which scares me because I've had clients that do not behave themselves in front of me, so I don't even want to know what it's like
oh,
when they go home.
yeah, yeah, it's happened. It's happened. It's happened. But the way the authors put it is those are the two things you need to feel safe in a conversation. That an individual needs to feel safe in the conversation is that the other party respects what they're saying, and that they have a shared purpose. And if we can keep that air of shared goals together, that's half the battle.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And one of the things in working with clients when we are working with them to kind of help build a vision is that we, like I said, we work separately to kind of build that vision with each one. But one of the things that
Mm-hmm.
we tell the partner is we don't want you to interrupt during this so that we make sure that your partner gets to say everything that they need to, because usually typically in a couple situation there's a dominant one and
Mm-hmm.
one that's more submissive, and then what happens is the dominant one chimes in, and then maybe the both of their goals aren't fully into the
Right.
vision that we're creating for them, and then it's not going to work either because one person's going to be happy and another person's not going to be happy,
Right.
and then that means nobody's going to be ultimately happy.
Right. Right. And that 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 scenario feeds into that idea of finding the shared common purpose. I've been through some of the same kinder programs that you've done, and I remember one of the first things I thought when he was talking about building that vision is, well, I started thinking about my own, and it's like, well, Amy's not going to go for that, you know,
Right.
and but you've got to move beyond that to make progress. And his ability with the examples he gave of being able to say yes, but this is how you both can do what you want to do and yet still have that together element, that really pulls it together.
Yeah, absolutely. And we, in a similar fashion where if one partner is living their life plan to the fullest and the other one isn't, that's never going to end well.
Right. Right.
So
So
that's why there has to be space for both of them to make sure that they can get out of this what they really want to in terms of the plan and what they really truly want to do. Because if both partners can do it, then it's much easier to come together. But if
right.
one partner is living their life plan and the other one is not, that's always going to cause conflict and issues.
Yes. Yes. So um the bulk of the book then deals with like how to kind of train yourself to think during these conflicts so that your emotions don't cloud your judgment, don't lead you astray, and to listen to the other party of the conflict and watch for those signs that that safety feeling is eroding to try to keep the conflict from
Mm.
escalating. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of good stuff in there that goes way beyond money conversations. Um, I was really, really quite impressed with the book.
Absolutely. And it sounds like, that's another great reason to have a financial planner that understands and can deal with conflict, because if you get to a point where one person is shutting down, a
Mm-hmm.
good advisor can recognize that and bring things back and not just continue on down the
Right,
line, and can make sure that both people are being heard. So that's a
right,
great point.
right, right. So, as with so much we talk about, it goes way beyond asset allocation and portfolios. There's a lot more to getting the most out of your financial planning. However, we've made it.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've almost made it through a podcast without telling people they need a budget or how to budget. So I'm always keeping track to see if we can do it.
That's right. That's right. Although there is lots of conflict in budget, so we'll spare the details. But
Yeah, we're kind of talking around it today instead of directly. So we'll count it as a
exactly.
win. We'll count it as a win. So good.
I like it. This
Yeah.
has been great. I'm glad that you were able to put this together for your class. And as far as I'm concerned, you get an A for today.
Well, thank you. I'm very happy to hear that. I was worried. We'll put a link to the book I've been talking about in the show notes in case people are interested. And again, it's a pretty good read actually. So it's not a textbook. It's good
Yeah,
stuff.
that'd be great. Great for not only financial stuff, but also just life stuff in general. So
Right.
definitely check
Right.
that out. And
Yeah.
if you have any questions on what we discussed today or working on conflicts in your financial plan, feel free to reach out to info@srbadvisors.com. And as always, subscribe to us on your favorite podcast medium. And we hope to hear any thoughts that you might have on this topic or any other topics that you might be interested in hearing about. Shoot us an email. We would love to cover what's interesting to you all.
Thanks, Nick.
Always a pleasure, Dave.
Have a good one.